What happens when one of the most powerful fashion houses in the world decides you are no longer welcome?
5 years after Megxit, Harry and Meghan have only really succeeded in becoming more isolated, winding up the royal family. Reputationally, for him, it was a massive turn-off. He became a joke.
All in all, it just is that overall look of their brand sort of in freefall.
Meghan Markle's story in the fashion and celebrity world has just taken a wild turn. And it's not just about outfits or designer labels anymore. Luxury brands, Hollywood insiders, and media outlets have all canceled their deals with the Sussexes, with SKIMS being the latest to pull back. Why did SKIMS kick Meghan out? And where is her story heading? Join us as we break down the shocking details of Meghan's fall from grace.
But I think her natural look is very laid back, California, cool, ripped jeans, baggy t-shirts, maybe some sportswear.
Meghan Markle and the fashion industry. When Harry and Meghan Markle first left the British royal family, she seemed unstoppable in the fashion world. She moved to the United States and attended high-profile events wearing designer outfits that sold out within hours. Photographers, journalists, and social media users followed her every move. For a while, it looked like she was set to conquer the fashion space. But according to recent reports, things are beginning to fall apart for the Duchess of Sussex. SKIMS and Balenciaga have already removed her from their brands, and many people are wondering how far it could go. According to industry experts, Meghan's rise was primarily due to public curiosity. Remember when Meghan left the British royal duties? Her fame worked for her. She was a former actress, a former senior royal, and a global name. Brands saw that visibility and decided to work with her. When she appeared in a white halter dress by Valentino at the 2020 Women of Vision Awards in New York, the brand's coverage exploded. The question now is, why are brands now trying to avoid Meghan? Stay with us to find out. Unlike other products in the market, luxury brands do not operate on affection. They operate on calculation. Executives look at what they can gain from a name and what it could cost their brand. With Meghan, those calculations changed. When the media reported her name, it was no longer about her outfit. It was about royal dramas, family disputes, politics, and online culture wars. A single photograph of Meghan could trigger days of arguments on social media. Brands noticed that the product often got lost in the noise, and remember that brands like Dior and Cartier had already learned how quickly rumors around Meghan could spiral. Brands like Dior and Cartier were among the first to recognize the problem. In 2023, reports suggested that Dior was considering Meghan for a campaign. Headlines ran across newspapers and online outlets in Europe and North America. However, Dior quietly ended the talks through internal channels. The decision was not about criticism or scandal. It was about control. Dior wanted to maintain authority over its message. It didn't want Meghan's controversies to divert attention from their collections. Other brands noticed. That move became a clear signal across the fashion world. In the early days after leaving the royal family, Meghan got attention from a global fashion brand, but her luck is now running out faster than anyone had expected. In 2018, she was seen as part of the group, driving the reform and modernization of the British royal family. By 2026, she is now viewed as one of the most controversial figures in that family. Her appearances became unpredictable. One day, she would be praised. The next, she would spark online arguments. Brands started to realize that associating with her could bring more complications than benefits. So did something that has left Meghan and Harry in shock. Rather than openly rejecting her, brands simply ceased engaging with her. Sources close to the couple confirmed that she has had no fittings, no invites, and no backstage access in a while. For those who pay attention to the fashion world, this is not new. Remember, the industry did the same thing to Gwyneth Paltrow in the early 2000s when her public image became too controversial. The industry did not argue with her, it just moved on. Meghan began facing the same treatment. But that wasn't all. Meghan was also not receiving invitations to the renowned Fashion Week. During her time as a senior royal, Meghan was never expected to attend public shows in Paris or Milan. Her role made that inappropriate. After stepping back, people expected her to become a major player in the global fashion show industry. But guess what? It never happened. Moreover, the face of fashion branding is also changing. Seats that were once reserved for celebrities are now allocated to digital creators, K-pop stars, and brand-loyal ambassadors. The source added that Meghan now has to lobby for tickets that were once given to her automatically. In many cases, she never received them. People's interest in Meghan started to change as well. Initially, stories focused on her clothes, the designers, and how beautiful she looked. Later, the focus shifted. Now, articles discussed how much her outfits cost, what the look was intended to convey, and whether it was appropriate. When she wore that gold Carolina Herrera dress in New York, everyone began discussing the price rather than the dress itself. Some articles even compared it to the average annual income, or to how much charities could raise with that amount. Brands notice this kind of coverage because, when the story is about money or judgment rather than fashion, it means working with her probably isn't worth it. Stylists also began to notice the change. The top stylists care deeply about their relationships with major fashion houses, sometimes even more than about their celebrity clients. A few of the stylists who had previously worked closely with Meghan began booking her for fewer events. It wasn't because they didn't like her, but because obtaining approvals from the brands was becoming more difficult. At high-profile events, luxury designers have to approve who wears their pieces. Those approvals slowed, and sometimes requests went unanswered. Publicists ran into the same thing. When they pitched Meghan for magazine features or fashion coverage, responses took longer than before. Editors started asking more questions. Some outlets politely declined, citing scheduling issues. It wasn't hostility, it was just caution. Media companies also think about risk. They know which stories will spark online debates, complaints, or backlash, and Meghan's name had become one of those triggers. The fashion world hadn't publicly turned on Meghan. It just stopped chasing her. And that's important. Once brands step back, they stand by it. One polite refusal leads to another. But if you think that was the worst Meghan faced, then what we are about to reveal next will leave you in shock. Meghan Markle and the Monaco incident. After brands began pulling back from Meghan, she faced another test in Monaco. According to reports, she tried to use her royal background to get special treatment at a luxury store. In the past, someone like her would walk in, get private help, and have the best items set aside. Staff would treat her like she belonged there. But Monaco, the tiny country full of rich and powerful people, has its own strict rules. It is not like Hollywood, where connections and fame can get you backstage or private access. In Monaco, stores and staff follow strict procedures, and no one is above the system, not even a duchess. Eyewitness reports confirmed that Meghan attempted to obtain some of the most exclusive SKIMS items in a high-end mall. Normally, a staff member would set aside the clothes Meghan wanted to see, prepare them in advance, and allow her to browse without waiting in line. She probably assumed that the same treatment would happen here. However, she received a polite, firm refusal. Staff informed her that the brand would not conduct private appointments. There was no fuss, no yelling, no drama, just a clear message that she would not get special treatment. She would have to follow the same rules as anyone else, or she could not shop at all. This was shocking because she was used to privileges. However, this time she had to follow the rules and could not blame anyone for misunderstandings. According to industry experts, luxury brands operate carefully. They know exactly how to manage who sees their products and when. In this case, the refusal was intentional rather than a mistake. The stores in Monaco were following instructions from the top. The message was clear. Meghan's title as Duchess would no longer automatically open doors. The old perks were gone. Staff were instructed not to make exceptions, regardless of her name or fame. For Meghan, this was frustrating. She could no longer attribute it to bad luck or to someone forgetting to make arrangements. In the world she had been living in, access and exclusivity were part of her identity. Receiving a no was a direct challenge to her influence. But that wasn't all, though. For Meghan, it wasn't just about SKIMS. It was about how other brands would handle her going forward. When a luxury boutique treats a high-profile person like a regular customer, it sends a signal to others. Fashion houses worldwide saw what happened in Monaco. They understand that it is now okay to step back and enforce the rules without worrying about backlash. One refusal in a high-profile place makes it easier for other brands to do the same. Now, here is the real problem. In the fashion and celebrity world, access is everything. Being able to walk into a store, see exclusive collections, and get private attention is a sign of influence. Meghan had built her image on that kind of access. When she was told no, it was like a blow to her reputation and identity. People in the industry saw that the rules had changed, and so did the expectations. Observers and insiders called the Monaco incident a litmus test. It showed that if one brand could enforce the rules and reject Meghan without any drama, other brands could do the same. It was a moment that changed the balance of power. The brands now held the cards, and her former status no longer automatically opened doors. In addition, the incident made it clear that her influence was declining. In Hollywood or New York, Meghan could often rely on fame to open doors, influence editors, or attract designers. In Monaco, the usual tricks did not work. Her reputation alone was no longer enough to guarantee attention. It was a reminder that access and power are temporary, and they depend on the system recognizing you. Meghan had moved through Hollywood, royal events, and global fashion circles with relative ease before. Suddenly, she was experiencing limits. And yet, this was only the beginning. People close to the Sussexes believe that she took it as a personal and professional wake-up call. She needs to do more to rebuild her relevance. By the time Meghan left Monaco, the lesson was clear. Fame and titles might open doors, but only if the system wants them to. But what if we told you that a potentially bigger problem is actually waiting for Meghan? Wait until you hear the full gist. Meghan Markle's issues beyond Monaco. After the Monaco incident, it wasn't just fashion that started to turn away from Meghan Markle. The ripples went much further. Reports suggest that Hollywood, media outlets, and even legal and financial circles began to quietly withdraw from the Sussexes quietly. In case you're wondering why you never heard it in the news, well, stuff like this does not appear in the headlines. Instead, doors stopped opening one by one, and emails went unanswered. Meetings were delayed or canceled without explanation. The professional world was firmly signaling that association with Meghan and the Sussex brand was now a big risk. Entertainment insiders refer to this as the stalled project syndrome. For a while, Meghan and Harry had been associated with several projects, documentaries, interviews, and speaking engagements. Many of these were at the talk stage. The problem was that in 2026, those talks began to quietly die. Emails requesting confirmations went unanswered. Meetings that were scheduled slipped away. Projects that appeared to be moving forward never materialized. Industry watchers say that this is common when someone becomes too unpredictable or controversial. Nobody wants to be the one blamed if something goes wrong. It is not personal. It is about protecting reputations, advertisers, and investments. Many insiders now describe 2026 as the anti-Meghan year. Over time, Meghan and Harry had burned bridges, and the consequences are finally catching up. People who once supported her, who had publicly celebrated her influence and visibility, began to distance themselves quietly. Collaborators in fashion, entertainment, and media have also started to protect their own reputations. They were not necessarily angry or vengeful, but they understood that being linked to controversy could harm them. What had once been curiosity and admiration was now seen as a liability. At the same time, Meghan is facing increasing scrutiny regarding legal and financial matters. What had once been what-ifs began turning into actual reviews in the United States. Experts describe the scrutiny as using a fine-tooth comb. Every grant, partnership, or financial transaction was reviewed more carefully than 2 years ago. Banks, compliance teams, and investment advisors sought to ensure there were no gaps, no risks, and no surprises. For the Sussex brand, the rules had suddenly become stricter and more difficult to manage. But that isn't all. The process is slow, almost invisible at first. But like a coil being wound tighter, the pressure continued to build around Meghan and Harry. By the time outsiders began to notice, the damage had already been done. This is how institutional pressure works. It does not explode simultaneously. It tightens gradually, and then, suddenly, you realize you cannot move forward as you used to. For Meghan, projects stalled, access disappeared, and support was gone. According to people following the story, one major reason for Meghan's troubles is the fear of platforming controversy. No major brand or media outlet wanted to risk being the next one accused of giving Meghan or Harry a stage to air disputes or attract negative headlines. Every decision to exclude or delay was calculated. The cost of association had exceeded the potential benefit. Publicists, editors, and executives had learned from past experiences. Even a single appearance could dominate headlines and overshadow the intended story or campaign. The calculus was simple. Visibility could be valuable, but unpredictability could be disastrous. Over time, this meant that fewer journalists, stylists, and media figures were actively championing her presence. Organizations like the Palace, global media conglomerates, and luxury brands do not forget. They remember patterns, public challenges, and controversies. For years, Meghan and Harry had openly criticized or bypassed these systems. These systems remembered those actions. Now, they exercised their power not through confrontation, but through silent exclusion. The organizations were not punishing her publicly. They are simply recalibrating access and control in their favor. The irony of the situation is striking. Meghan rose through elite systems like the royal family, high fashion, and Hollywood, which had once celebrated her as a figure of influence. She learned to live in these worlds, to command attention, and to set trends. However, these very systems can operate quietly and decisively. They do not need headlines to enforce boundaries. They withdraw without notice, and their influence alone is sufficient to reshape trajectories. Meghan's rise had depended on curiosity, access, and visibility. Her fall was now driven by the same structures that made her rise. Not receiving an invitation to the Met Gala, to the front row of fashion weeks, or to high-profile Hollywood events is not merely a social snub. It is a professional death sentence. In these worlds, visibility is equivalent to opportunity. One missed invitation means one lost chance to be photographed in front of the cameras. One missed opportunity may lead a designer or brand to select someone else for a campaign or event. Influence shrinks quietly, and once the momentum slows, it is nearly impossible to regain. Meghan experienced this firsthand. Each polite refusal, each absent email, each cancelled meeting contributed to a steady contraction of her professional and social network. By 2026, the pattern was unmistakable. The slow contraction was devastating precisely because it went largely unnoticed by the public. Meghan could still appear at high-profile events, but the support behind the scenes was limited. Allies who had once facilitated introductions, negotiated appearances, or amplified her influence were stepping back. Without that network, her access and reach began to erode. Influence is cumulative. Once a single door closes, it affects the next. Once a key person stops responding, it triggers a chain reaction. You've not seen the most interesting part yet, so keep watching. The Sussex brand now faced what insiders describe as cumulative consequences. To some watchers, what Meghan is experiencing is called institutional collapse. It operates quietly and quickly once momentum is lost. It is not about a single scandal. It is about patterns. Every decision to exclude, delay, or ignore adds up. By the time anyone notices, the person affected has already lost influence. The institutions Harry and Meghan had challenged, Hollywood studios, luxury brands, media outlets, and even the British royal family and global media organizations are now fighting back without drama. Meghan's journey demonstrates how quickly the elites can withdraw support without confrontation. The tools of influence are simple: access, visibility, and privilege. Once these tools are withdrawn, the effect is immediate and long-lasting. Remember also that the Sussexes have never shied away from speaking their minds, and over the years, they have built a reputation for confronting individuals and institutions. For instance, in March of 2020, Harry publicly criticized the British tabloid press. He described the way newspapers had treated Meghan as toxic and said their invasive coverage was to blame for her mental health struggles. This was unusual for a senior royal, and the ensuing public debate was intense. News outlets and editors scrambled to respond, and the episode made it clear that Harry was willing to challenge the institutions that had once been untouchable. Then came the infamous 2021 interview with Oprah Winfrey. In that televised special, Meghan and Harry openly accused the royal family of neglect and racism, claiming they had failed to provide support during the toughest moments of Meghan's early royal life. These allegations dominated headlines across Europe, North America, and Australia. Editors, columnists, and social media commentators spent weeks debating the claims. The palace issued a brief statement, but the narrative had already escaped control, sparking an unprecedented global conversation about monarchy, media, and race. As if that were not enough, the couple produced a documentary and a project under Archewell. In 2022, Harry criticized media organizations for promoting negative stories while ignoring their philanthropic work. He cited instances in which journalists had published misleading information about Meghan's past, family, and charitable efforts. While the commentary was framed as advocating for truth, it fueled perceptions that the couple was actively challenging traditional media gatekeepers rather than cooperating with them. Even in the legal world, the Sussexes also stirred controversies. Meghan pursued legal action against the Mail on Sunday in 2020, winning damages and an apology. Harry publicly criticized UK media coverage during the case, blaming them for press intrusion. According to royal family observers, these legal battles were both protective and confrontational, demonstrating the couple's willingness to challenge powerful institutions in both public and private spheres. Smaller but notable examples added to the pattern. Harry openly criticized the monarchy in speeches at mental health and veterans conferences, questioning how rigid traditions could support modern royal family members. Meghan spoke at charity events about systemic bias and inequity, often linking her personal experiences to broader cultural critiques. Each act, whether through interviews, speeches, or legal action reinforced a narrative. The Sussexes were willing to publicly confront institutions, challenge long-standing power structures, and call out those who failed them, creating friction with the worlds they once depended on. At this point, you can get a cup of water because what we are about to reveal will catch you completely off guard. Will the issues affect Meghan and Harry's marriage? By the time professional doors began to close in fashion, Hollywood, and the media, the strain was no longer merely about projects or brand partnerships. It began to intrude on the personal world of Meghan and Harry. Sources close to the couple confirmed that cracks have started to show. Where Meghan pushed forward aggressively, trying to maintain visibility and relevance, Harry reportedly began quietly recalibrating his approach. His priority shifted from chasing headlines to containing the fallout to preserving whatever remained of his individual reputation and legacy. Experts describe Harry's approach as a distant strategy. Have you seen pictures of him lately? Yes, he's now making more solo appearances, attending events without Meghan, and even scheduling interviews in which the focus is firmly on his own initiatives. For instance, he gave a speech at a veterans charity in the United States, where the discussion centered entirely on military mental health. No mention of Sussex projects or family disputes. Observers saw this as an attempt to salvage his personal brand while separating it from the turbulence surrounding Meghan. Whereas Meghan continued to seek high-profile opportunities, Harry's appearances became measured and calculated, designed to avoid drawing attention to controversies or reigniting royal drama. The strategy is also about containment over relevance. While Meghan has pursued visibility relentlessly, attempting to influence media narratives and brand associations, Harry seems to have accepted that the public spotlight is no longer fully controllable. Sources indicate he is trying to preserve the aspects of his reputation that still command goodwill, such as charitable work and military advocacy. The difference between their approaches is striking. Meghan wants to confront the tides of criticism head-on, maintaining presence and challenging institutions openly. Harry, on the other hand, appears to be signaling regret, stepping back and letting the storm run its course without adding fuel to it. Attempts to reconnect with the palace in the United Kingdom have reportedly been met with cold and consistent refusal. Channels that might have allowed reconciliation or negotiation are closed. Palace insiders make it clear that trust has eroded beyond repair, and the willingness to reverse course is non-existent. For Harry, seeing this permanent closure has forced a new level of realism. Bridges burned publicly rarely get rebuilt quietly. Every outreach attempt has returned the same signal. The door is shut, and there is no appetite to revisit past conflicts. The difference in their strategies is creating what insiders describe as a strategic clash at home. There are also reports that the couples fight over keeping their kids out of all the mess. Decisions regarding interviews, charitable projects, and appearances are now akin to a negotiation between the two. The palace's position leaves little room for maneuver. Insiders say the message is unambiguous. No exceptions, no reopening of doors, no attempts to bypass established boundaries. Harry reportedly understands that once the palace exercises institutional power, it rarely reverses it. The consequences of past actions and statements, whether by him or Meghan, remain part of the record, influencing how every future interaction is treated. For Harry, this creates a practical imperative: contain damage and avoid behaviors that could provoke further exclusion. While they remain partners in life and in public identity, their strategies cannot perfectly coexist. One strategy relies on engagement, confrontation, and media leverage, while the other relies on discretion, retreat, and protection. Over time, this divergence is expected to create more visible tension, not as a scandal, but as a practical reality of operating within different risk parameters. Thank you for staying with us. How do you think Meghan Markle can salvage the situation? Share your opinions with us in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, click the video below to watch it.